Cowboys.
Definitely Cowboys and
Has
Ranchers.
to be.
Probably prostitutes. Just saying.
Obviously.
I'm gonna put my hat in the ring with the OK Corral.
I don't think so. I think Amber is trying to go for a little more mysterious.
Obscure?
Yeah.
Oh.
Shit. I see the little
Mm.
Amber's
It's all
the problem
you.
child.
Ah!
All right. Sorry to so rudely interrupt. Joe, what did you think your guess was?
I was gonna say, I can't remember the name of it, but there's some like old timey hotel in Prescott. I think it's on like Whiskey Row in Prescott that's supposedly haunted. So maybe that.
Okay. Both very, very good guesses. But I'm actually going to take us a little bit closer to home tonight. Very surprisingly.
Oh.
With that, I'm Amber, your tour guide for this episode of Murderous, Mysterious, and Macabre. And tonight I'll be telling my co-hosts, Amy and Joe, all about the Pioneer Living History Museum in Phoenix, Arizona.
I forgot about this place. Oh my god, wait. Sorry. Story time. Sorry. Wait, do you want story time now or story time when you get to the ghosts?
Let's go ahead. I'm going to I'll give our warning and then we'll do story time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dive right in.
Just before we get to the stories, reminder that you can find content warnings for the episode in the description below, so check down there if you have any sensitivities. And that's that. Story time.
All right. Story time. So, the museum that I worked at in college was not this one. But the director of that museum, who was my boss, she had actually worked at that museum when she was a bit younger and still working on her degrees. And she would have to like dress up and everything for reenactments and stuff. And she said there were like really weird, odd instances where like she'd get locked out of rooms or like things would go missing or they'd just like brooms falling over, cups falling off of the table that she was working at. It's like weird, creepy stuff. And she always had an uneasy feeling about it. It just gave her these really icky, creepy vibes. And because of that, I have never gone to this museum.
Me neither. I have not gone.
So I'm going to actually say this place. These are the longest notes I've had yet on this podcast, which I think I've said every episode so far. Like, and I think I literally got to a point where I just had to stop taking notes because like I would uncover like
there's too
more
much
and more and more, and there were more like sites in the Living History Museum that like I hadn't even seen and heard about as like one of the main sites that are supposedly haunted. So there is so much here. And I will say it actually seems like the people who founded it are really cool. They do a lot of really cool work. So, but let's take it from the top. We'll get into all of that later.
All right.
So the Pioneer Living History Museum is a sprawling 90 acres. It's an open air museum. So it's just out kind of, actually along the, basically along the Interstate 17, which is one of, it's an interstate, so it goes through multiple states, but it's just north to south through all of Arizona, gets you all the way up and down the entire state and onwards to, the states up above us. And just north of Carefree Highway, which is one of our loops here in the valley, and nestled up against the Black Rock foothills of northern Arizona. So this is an open air museum. It's essentially just a big expanse of land with a lot of little spots kind of added on top of it. Some built and some not built. And I'll go into that a little bit more soon. So this was started in 1956 by a group of native Arizona history enthusiasts who came together to form the Pioneer Arizona Foundation. And they're citing the reason for this is they were concerned about the rapid growth in Arizona and wanted to be able to preserve some of the historic buildings that they were afraid were going to get just torn down to be replaced by new buildings. So it started as, this kind of almost historic conservation effort in Arizona to be able to either recreate some of these buildings that were maybe going to be torn down so that you had kind of like this snapshot in time of what Arizona looked like. But then even more impressively, they straight up moved some buildings from all around Arizona. So it's not even just in Phoenix. Like they've like picked up entire buildings from other places within Arizona and moved them into this museum. So
They went all out.
All out. So it's almost like they created like a little city of ghosts just spread out all across Arizona. And now
they did it to themselves.
Yeah.
This one
Yeah.
area.
You got some pissy ghosts that are like, dude, my home does not belong here. What are you doing?
Why the fuck did you move my house? God damn it!
Yeah.
My new ghost neighbor is an asshole. I don't like it here.
Why did you put my house next to the brothel?
Yeah, some prim and proper lady. I'm like, I don't want to see that here.
Clutching my pearls.
Yes, exactly. So the goal of the museum, according to the foundation, is to portray the life of territorial Arizonans from roughly 1863 to 1912, which is, I think, the span of like houses and buildings they've sought to get. So not a huge span in the greater like looking at Arizona, but a decent like, I don't know, 40, 50 years. So a good chunk of time there. And it includes a pioneer village that contains 19th century buildings, including both some original buildings to the time and also the log cabin where the first senator of Arizona grew up. Like they went all out as far as what is encompassed.
What can they get?
park.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like what buildings can we get here? That's cool. That's crazy.
And crazy. And there's a lot. So I'm not going to tell you the story of like every building there. I focused on some of the more well-known ones and especially some of the ones with reportings of ghosts, as per my segment on this show. But they have a lot. There's a lot of different buildings. They've got a few like mini museums within their museum. So they've got like each of the buildings kind of has stuff on display that you can like look into and just kind of step into and see like what life was like. So I'm going to go through building by building. And we are going to now talk about some of the actual hauntings. So, starting with the community church, which is reconstructed. This is an A-frame white clapboard church with windows that kind of run along the sides. The front has a nice pretty window, a big set of double doors, and then a little stained glass window up above. And it's got actually a little like miniature bell tower up top of it.
How cute.
It is. It's actually very cute and tiny. With that, you guys can actually scroll down to the first page to see this church. It is pretty simple interior.
Aww.
It's like kind of yellow tan. It's got like a few like tiny chandeliers. It's a very small church, so you're talking like one row down the aisle, like a few pews, and then like the front church area.
Very old school,
Pulpit.
yeah.
It's called the pulpit.
I would have never known that.
Did you hear me? I
either.
knew church lingo. It's called
I'm
the
so
pulpit.
proud of you.
And
yes.
and even though I don't spend my time in churches, I somehow knew that.
I'm sure. Yeah, you read it in a. Somewhere.
I'm sure I read it somewhere.
Probably.
Not in the church, obviously. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no.
But no,
Very
it
cute,
is...
very like traditional, what you think of as like an
Yes,
old tiny
yes.
church out in the
Mhm.
Midwest or something, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Little
surrounded
church
by
on
a little
prairie.
white picket fence. Yeah, very pretty.
Yes. So this church is a reconstructed building. So it's a precise reconstruction of the 1880 St. Paul's Methodist Episcopal Church, which was actually built out in Globe, Arizona. So the Tell family of Globe decided to essentially give a huge I was trying to say generous and donation at the same time, but a very generous donation to this Pioneer History Foundation to say like, hey, we will give you all the money you need to build this if you'll build this reconstruction. So this original church was essentially, it was a church out in Globe, and then Globe started getting bigger. They needed to build a new church, and they kept like pieces of it and a lot of like documentation from the church, but like they couldn't keep that little church going. So once this foundation started and they had like more of a space for it, this family that was involved in the city and in the church kind of like gave them all this information to rebuild this on the land of the museum.
That's nice. That's
cute.
Very cool.
It is very cool. And now we get into why it's probably haunted, even though it's a reconstruction.
Very haunted.
Which is because on top of just giving them the plans and historical information, they also gave them the organ, the church bell, and then a couple of the pews and even the altar from the original church were all transported into this reconstruction to be authentic.
I was
very focal
actually
points
going
of
to
the
say,
church.
Yeah. I was going to say, you could see the pretty organ in the picture. Like, it's a beautiful organ. And it stands, I was like, oh, how pretty. That's kind of cool as a reconstruction. Like, they really put the work in. No, they did not. They took a haunted organ and stuck it in this poor church.
I think that piano too might be as well. But like, it's like, there are two, I think it's like two of the pews are original and the rest are like modeled off of those two. And then, it's like the altar, I think parts of the pulpit. I don't know if it was just like, if they were saying the altar as part of the pulpit was reconstructed or not, but yeah. So, and then the bell, like the actual bell that they have up in that little bell tower up front, which is really just like this tiny little like thing right on top of the church. Is not very big at all. But that original bell is there. And you're going to see that as kind of a running theme in this museum, where it's like either it's the whole ass building that's original, or it's like there just happens to be pieces of the original
parts and pieces
that it's just like a ghost would really like to cling to, apparently. So
yes.
This church supposedly, and I couldn't find too much about these guys, but supposedly has two ghosts. They're referred to as a brother and sister. Who are thought to have passed away and were somehow attached to the church in some way, as a place where maybe they had gone when they were alive, or like took shelter in, or something like that. So they were supposedly attached to the church and are thought to be attached to one of the items that was brought over with the reconstruction of the church. With them and in the church, or I would say you guys haven't been there, but people report feeling cold spots, experiencing lights with like a mind of their own, turning off and on by themselves, and other just general activity that kind of suggests that like there might be people in and out of the church. So very kind of just vague stuff, but the church is apparently very active with kind of like nothing too crazy that I found really points to these two individuals or like have people having names, but it's just thought to be, I don't know if like they see, I don't know how old the brothers and the brother and sister are. I don't know like if it's if people like see them ever, but it seemed just kind of like very general, like almost like the church is still kind of active in its own way, like still kind of things going on, activity.
Yeah, I would assume if they're thinking that this is a brother and sister, that they're probably younger kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't say explicitly, but
sad, but
happens.
Yeah.
Kids died young then. Everybody died young then. You were lucky to make it to 30.
Seriously, if you think about like churches, especially in like really small, out of the way
Mhm.
towns like there were in Arizona back then, when there were natural disasters, or when there were like pandemics and things like that, people took refuge in the church. Usually, it was as small
Yeah.
as this is. It was usually the biggest building in a town of that
Yeah.
size, and it's where you could get people together to account for them and keep them safe. So I wouldn't be
Mhm.
surprised if people have died in a lot of these old churches in small towns over time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
No, especially too, I know we've talked before on the show, just like the history of Arizona with like flash flood territories. Like it was very common. Like the church was kind of a place you could go to just like weather the storm. Like you just get inside as
Yeah.
soon as you could. And that was
Flash
a good space.
floods, giant
Yeah.
dust storms,
Wildfires.
fucking
even,
lightning
yeah.
strikes, wildfires, all sorts of shit. Yeah.
Every sign in Arizona that's basically telling you like people should not have settled here happening. Like that's
Yeah,
when you, like, go see the church. You're like, oh man, part of me just
You're
feels
like,
they
I'll
made a
be
huge
safe in the
mistake.
church.
But what about my gold, my copper, my silver?
Nope. All right. With that, that is our community church. Our next location is the Yellow Victorian, which is an original building. It is a single-story Yellow Victorian house with a large front porch, lots of windows at the front of the house, again, double doors, and a round little cute alcove towards the front of the house. The interior is very Victorian, so you've got like this narrow hallway that kind of leads to the back of the house with like a sitting area, what looks like maybe part of a kitchen, and a few like rooms that come off to the side of it. So very closed off with just like one room towards the back. And there are 4 rooms in this house. So you guys can now move on to page number 2. So we've got a parlor, a music room, a kitchen, and then 2 bedrooms. It's
super
such
cute.
a cute house. Like this is looks wise my favorite. It's just adorable. So it looks, it almost like has the feel of the house from Up. Like visually,
A little bit,
I
yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Like I know it's like
Yeah.
a 2-story,
Yeah.
I think, but like something about like
Yeah.
the alcove and like the architecture
Yeah.
and character of it, like feels like it could be not the interior, just like the outside. And it again, it's like that
Yes.
like
Yeah.
picket fence and things like that.
Well, please tell me that this is a friendly ghost, because I would be willing to live in this house with a friendly ghost
Right?
if it was friendly, because it's adorable.
It is. So, lucky for you, yes, supposedly a very friendly ghost.
Yay!
So the history of this house is that this house was actually built by a John Sears, who was a Missouri native who moved to Phoenix after surviving the Civil War, where he fought for the Confederate Army. So
Don't love that.
No, not liking that. It gets better. All right. Mostly because he's not involved in the haunting bits. But yeah, so 1878 is when the house gets built. He's 35. He moves to try and get a fresh start with his family, and he comes out to Arizona to be a cattle rancher. He was pretty successful. He ended up having a pretty fruitful ranch. He ended up having like a lot of orchards on the property, which is actually a very common theme in Arizona ranchers, is we used to have a lot of land and a lot of orchards out here. So a lot of orchards. He lived on the house with his family for a long time. It's thought that the farm passed on. So we know that it passed on to the Newman family, was the next family that owned it. It's John Sears died at about the age of 97. So in 1937 is when he died. Like he was kicking around for a long time. And so it's thought that it changed hands to the Newman family with his death. Like around that time is when it came into their possession. But I don't have like an exact date of purchase or anything like that. And then the Newman family just lived there for a while. In 1969, I don't know when or how they stopped owning the home. But in 1969, we know that the building is now not occupied because it is scheduled to be torn down.
Oh,
Yep. But
So it was saved.
it was saved, yes. And I forget which town it was in. It doesn't look like I wrote that down. But it was essentially the town was scheduled to demolish it. Like it came back to like town ownership or something like that. And it was scheduled to be demolished. And the people who were going to demolish it essentially reached out to the foundation and were like, if you can buy and move this house in 30 days, like yours. Otherwise, like, we're tearing it down. So the people at the Pioneer Living History Museum like pulled a lot of resources together to get the house and get it moved and get it onto their land, but successfully. So it is there. It's all intact. Reports on hauntings. So we're not sure if anyone from the Sears family is still there, but as we kind of hinted at earlier, maybe that's a good thing. However, Miss Newman from the second family to own the house supposedly haunts it and will actually, she's actually considered a very intelligent ghost. Like, she will talk to investigators that come talk to her.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
Very friendly ghost.
Yes. So I didn't hear any EVPs, so that's one thing I wanted to look at more with this. And I honestly, guys, I just got so bogged down, and there was such a wide breadth of stories, and I wanted to capture as much as I could about the place that I was originally going to pick a couple of them and really deep dive and see if I could find every story and footage and EVPs and stuff like that. But I ended up just reading a lot of accounts and summaries of it, so I could kind of give a big overview of everything you can expect here. So supposedly it was I didn't hear the EVP, but somebody discussing it was essentially someone talking to her, and she was just very polite. She was just very politely having a conversation with someone. They were the paranormal investigator. The gist of it was they were essentially saying we're here to visit, and she's like, oh really, kind of just having a whole ass conversation with people.
That's adorable.
And you said this family got it in when? The 1930s ish, maybe?
Yes, we think late 30s or the 40s. So just a very
nice. Okay.
Polite.
I'm just imagining her and the little housewife. Would you like a martini while we talk? Have some chocolate chip cookies.
100%. It does seem so. She is there. She's very intelligent, very polite. There's also supposedly a little boy there. And I don't know. Again, we don't know if he's part of the Sears family. It didn't name him as somebody as part of the Newman family, so don't know where he is part of or who he's associated with. But there's a little boy who is seen looking.
Do you think that's why she didn't move on? Because there was a little boy ghost that needed taken care of, and she's so sweet and polite?
Maybe.
Oh, I just got goosebumps.
I can see. Well, especially whether it's hers or whether it's the one before her. Yeah, if you're just
just being an empathetic, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to take care of this kid first. Yep. Oh, I got this. That's good. Good theory. But no, so he kind of looks out at them through the window, and there will be he's attributed to mysterious lights going on in the attic. So I don't know if he's playing up there or what. And his voice has also been caught on EVPs. So this is a very talkative house.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people will catch things. And I think he was, oh gosh, I can't remember what the EVP had said that he had said. Let me see. I'm going to let me find it really quick.
Google it in real time.
Write it down, but I want to Google it. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I wrote some of these down because they were so interesting. But and then again, it was people reporting on the EVP. I didn't listen to the EVP itself. Okay, but I do have them. So back to Mrs. Newman. It was an investigator. So this is a transcript of it essentially. I'm going to go into, and I'll these come from a website called hauntedhouses.com that covered the Arizona Pioneer Village. And I'm going to honestly drop that link in the chat for our Discord in case you guys want to do a peek-sees. But so essentially it's an investigator with Mrs. Newman was coming in and just on the EVP was like, we've come a long way to talk to you, and the ghost recorder supposedly says, imagine that. And then investigator says, like, this must be the sitting room. And she goes, like, yes, this is the sitting room. And then Mrs. Zerman, did you make a pie today? No, not yet. Like, that's the EVP conversation transcribed from
Oh
her.
my gosh.
And then
I love it.
there is the little boy. So it's supposedly he hangs out up in the attic, and his voice has been saying on the EVPs, like, that's me. They don't know. Cold. What's happening? They don't know. So it's like
Aw.
weird. It's like very disjointed. Like it doesn't seem to be in, like, at least what was transcribed doesn't seem to be in response to anything. But it sounds like he's maybe
Just
the
a
one thing I thought
confused
was
little
interesting.
boy.
He's
Yeah.
confused, but also maybe sounds like he's like they're talking to each other in some sense. Like maybe he's talking.
What if-
to her,
yeah.
things
What
like
if
that.
it's-
Yeah. Like he's talking to her, not the people.
Yes.
What if it's the little boy and his sister ghost from the church coming to visit her?
Yes. Yes, because she makes pies for them, apparently.
Exactly.
Which is, yeah, and that's it too. Like, that's it seems like such an interesting concept where it's like they've kind of made this little village of all these like places that, and a lot of them are so old, and people like, especially you imagine like you go to Arizona to like restart your life or something like that. Like, you don't really have much else. Like, if you're going to be attached to something, like that makes sense, right?
Attached
Yeah.
to your house,
So
yeah.
it's like, now they
for
just have a
sure.
little ghost village of people walking around and visiting each other.
I love it.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. Like, and there are a couple like little kids, so part of it almost seems like it would make sense because a lot of the activity is very similar, where it's like turning on lights or turning on and off lights and like playing little jokes. So a lot of it makes sense where it's like maybe they are just like visiting. I love that theory. But in addition to that, there is also supposedly a rocking chair that kind of like moves on its own. I think it's supposed to be attributed to the little boy. And supposedly staff feel a very friendly presence when they're in this house. And they feel like it feels like a sense of, it's a weirdly described, but feels like a sense of moral encouragement was like the quote I got. Like, so they get like the sense of like somebody just kind of like really like, I don't know, bolstering them up a little bit as they go about their
It's a
day.
wholesome, just like,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
I love it. I want to just go hang out in this house, man.
Right? See? Like, it's not that far outside of town. We could do it.
No, after a bad day of work, go travel up to this house and just
Yep.
sit
See if we
there.
can have
and
I
tea on
mean-
our
go
porch.
get air.
Ma'am, how did you get in here and why do you have margaritas with you?
We
Don't
thought
ask
Mrs.
questions.
Miller would want them. We brought her own martini glass.
We wanted to have drinks with her.
Miss Newman needs to have a martini or a margarita or whatever the hell else we're drinking. That's why.
Yes,
I mean,
yeah.
she's out here caring for kids that theoretically are not hers. I think she deserves
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah, she just
Absolutely.
something good.
Like,
So that one is without a doubt, I think that one's my favorite spot. Like that house was like my favorite one. It just looks the cutest too. Like
Yes.
think it
Yeah.
looks so precious. That like, and it's just so wholesome. Our next house is the Merritt Farmhouse. So if you guys want to move on to the next page, which is a wooden structure. Oh, yeah, Merritt Farmhouse. So full
Ooh.
another wood house with a, let's see, it's got like 3 rooms, a big large pantry that was eventually remodeled to be a bathroom, a porch that wraps around like 75% of the house. And if you look at the first picture, you can see what looks like kind of an addition to the building. And that's because the
Yeah.
Merritt family started with one family living there and the kids were all younger, but then as the kids got older and like the dad, I guess, just decided they all needed more space, so he's just did a pro dad move and was like, well, I'll just build more house for the kids then, I guess. So this is another house that is like, was like very fun to read about because it was just totally like, yeah, we started with this much house and then kids got bigger, like they don't want to share a room, I'll just make
Yeah.
more house now. But it's
Hey, at
another,
least he was
like,
proactive about it, you know?
I mean, yeah.
Like, took that into, like, consideration, which is very, very sweet, I think. It is, these guys are also ranchers. So John and Emma Merritt bought a 100-acre ranch in about 1910 when they moved down from Nevada to Arizona. And that's when they built the Merritt house. So you can see here, it's kind of also got that, like, not full Victorian vibes, but it's very similar construction style. So it's just kind of like the wood slats. It's got some big windows in the front. It's got a couple little chimneys up top, and then that big porch that we mentioned already. This one is, let me see, I believe that this is an original house, not a reconstruction. I believe it's the original. I don't have that one written down. But they were very, very prosperous with their homestead. They had several crops that they grew. They had also orchards, so they were making like a decent living, like a decent income. They had a couple of kids before they moved down, and then they had one child, Beryl, who was born and raised in this house. And so eventually, when everybody else kind of passed on and moved out, like, it became her house. So she was living there with her own family. The daughter, Beryl, actually lived on the farm until, guess what year? They built this house in 1910. When did their daughter Beryl?
1986. We'll go with that.
I'm going 98. 1998.
Okay. The date I have is that she lived in this house, and it was still her family house until 2008.
What?
I would say 2000, but I was like, no way. 98 years old she lived to be? Jeez, man.
Shut up.
Old. Yeah. And I don't know that she was, like, exactly born in 1910 or born shortly after. Like, but she was still.
She's well into her 90s.
Crazy. Yes. And so this is the original. The reason they have this house is because in 2008, she donated the home to the Pioneer Living History Museum. She donated.
Like, I'm dying. Here's my home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was her house.
That's
like,
crazy.
It became her family. Like, she was born there. Like, it was her parents' house, and then it was like her family's house, and so she lived there all the way through her her entire life lived in this house, and so she wanted it to be preserved. She literally just she wanted, and so it's got a lot of her family's property as well. Because she just wanted it to be preserved. Like, that was going to be her family's mark. Supposedly, there are around 9 ghosts seen by staff and visitors, all expected to be from the Merritt family. So they're all, like, hanging out to this day. Very close family. Like, seems like...
No wonder she wanted it preserved. She's like, my whole family's in here, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want it torn down. But no, that's a good point, though. Like, what if it was, like, already haunted while she was living in it?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
it has to be, right? She's the last one standing.
Like, she's just regularly having, like, little chats with mom and dad, like, at the dinner table.
Tea with mom and dad every day. Yeah, hell yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. One of the most common sightings is of a woman holding a baby who's seen by visitors and staff. No mention on, like, where in the family, where in the timeline that is. There's also, again, ties to maybe Joe's theory. There's a young boy and girl who seem to like to play little jokes and games, and can be seen around.
They're hopping all over this town,
right? They're just visiting everybody.
Well, these two are especially funny, and it makes sense if maybe they're, like, the ones moving around too, because, like, they supposedly like to play jokes on the groundskeeper, especially. Like, they very much like the groundskeepers to take care of the place. Like, they like to, like, move things around and like play little pranks, essentially.
That's funny.
There is one kind of cranky ghost here. There's an older man who's described as not liking visitors to the house, and I almost wonder if that's not like Papa Merritt himself being like, I cannot.
Like, I'm cranky old man.
I need to get out of here.
Yeah, like, I built this thing with my own 2 hands. You guys are fucking it up. Get out of here.
You're ruining it.
I can see it.
don't even wipe off your shoes before you come in. Like, who raised you? Yeah.
I love that.
There are alleged EVPs caught of the ghosts responding directly to investigators as they talk to each other too. So this is another one where it is like supposedly pretty intelligent haunts. And let me see if I can find like another transcript of those. I can't remember. A Merritt House. Yes, I think I can find it in the transcript. But yeah, this is another one where it was like they would kind of like talk to it. So they caught the boy in theory, or supposedly there was an EVP of the boy caught, where the boy says something along the lines of like, I'm in trouble, and the investigator says like, no, you're not. And the boy just says like, I just want to play. So it's just kind of like moving stuff around and like literally
sweet
like,
baby.
Yep. Which is
just let him play.
Yeah, right. Like, you can play jokes. You're fine. And another one is an EVP where it's like essentially the investigator comes in and says more or less like, we've come a long way to see you, and supposedly one of the ghosts is like, oh, you don't say, like kind of like that mentality. So
Love it.
And then it's the male spirit was supposedly caught on EVP, essentially just saying like, who are they, like, and go away. Like, so he just totally is like, why are there people in my house? Like, I don't want this.
That would be me.
Love
like, it.
I was gonna say it's me in ghost form. Like, get the hell out.
Get out of here. I didn't invite you.
I just want my peace and quiet.
Which to me is like, I can totally see and respect, where it's just like, we're not like violent and scratching and angry. We're just like, who's to be in here?
Yeah, we're just cranky. Like, dude, I'm just trying to live my best afterlife. What are you doing here?
You walked in on my crochet time, dude. Get the fuck out.
Get out. But yeah, so this is another fun one. It's very lively. It seems for the most part very, very, other than like one old man who'll get like annoyed at you for asking questions, it seems like everybody's very much like ready to talk to investigators. And some of the ghosts even supposedly talk to each other, which is kind of just so interesting to see.
I love it. I'm just like, I am down for this, like, harmless, casual haunting. I really like it. This is my style of ghosts.
It's literally like so much of this is literally like just like a little, I guess pun intended, ghost town. Like it's just a little town of ghosts, and they're just doing their normal ghostly day and like just hanging out. And you're just, I guess, allowed to be there
making pies, babysitting random kids. Like they're just continuing
having
on.
A grand old time.
Yeah,
I love it. I
have their own little
love
like
it.
ghosty community, which is like kind of crazy.
I know. Jo's just envisioning herself. She's like, I'm gonna be a ghost, and y'all are gonna come over. We're gonna crochet together and have tea parties.
Yes.
It's gonna be a wonderful afterlife.
It'll be great.
Because fuck reincarnation. I don't want to come back.
I mean,
life's hard.
I don't know. Maybe just like. Yeah, life is pretty hard.
Exactly.
Ghosts cling on, get bitter and cranky. People start thinking you're a demon after like 10 years. Worth it. All right. Our next building. So we're going to move on. We're going to talk about a few more buildings. The next one, I'm just going to preface.
Not so nice and warm and cuddly.
No. In fact, why don't you guys scroll down to the next page?
Oh boy.
And tell me what vibes you get.
Oh.
It's been such a good start.
School?
Oh, no.
This is a school?
No.
It is. I'm just telling you, I don't get good
vibes
on these pictures. For those of you listening in.
Some kind of a stuffed dummy in the corner.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking creepy as shit.
It's not good.
No.
It's not great.
First of all, human alive children are fucking creepy. I'm just saying it. I'll be the person to say it. Everybody thinks it. Nobody likes to say it. Children are fucking creepy.
Yes.
Dead children, 100 times creepier. 100 times creepier. Stuffed dolls with dead children, way more creepy. Just this is off the chart. I don't like it.
So just
I don't like that it's human sized at all.
No, it's and I can't tell if it's supposed to be like a stuffed like teacher, like it's supposed to represent the teacher at the front of school, like rating it, like. But
yeah,
so just do not like.
To me, that looks like it was trying to be a teacher. Yeah,
yeah, it's just like I just get like, especially from the inside of school, such bad vibes.
Truly.
This here, it's like maybe it's just me like getting a little PTSD from being in education at one point. We'll never know. But it is like, so we're going to talk about the Gordon School, which is an original building that was transplanted onto Pioneer Living History Museum. It is like, just to paint a picture for those of you listening in, it is like a little ramshackle wooden one-room schoolhouse. Like I cannot describe it in any better way. Like it's just like the like pieces of wood around it. It almost looks like Lincoln logs, like that are just barely packed in. On the outside, like literally just like wooden, like little tiles on the front of the house, and that's
just like shaker shingles, and
yes, it's just like a little square. It's got like a few
looks
boxes
dark
inside.
And creepy.
It's
fits maybe wood. It fits maybe a dozen desks in there, maybe.
Yes, with just like a little chalkboard at the front, like barely, like the little bit of room for a stuffed teacher doll to creepily sit at the front. And it is like literally doesn't even look like it's got a face or hair. It looks like just the barest construction of a dummy.
So creepy.
Like
I don't like it.
Little House on the Prairie dress. It is just bare bones wood inside. Like you can see the framing for the roof. You can kind of see there are windows. At least it's not totally windy. There's natural sunlight coming in, but it just, the whole thing looks like very unfinished. And just like, it just like the picture, I don't know what it is about it. Like it just does not give good vibes. Like that's it.
I think from the outside, it looks like what you would expect like a prison structure to look like from back then. Like that's what it reminds me of. Like you would expect them to be housing inmates in there, not children trying to learn. It's creepy looking. I mean,
there's something to be said for government funded buildings. Prison buildings suck. Schools where the teachers are not funding the decorations of their own classrooms suck. Like, ugh.
So this is, it's not great. This is actually, so this one room schoolhouse is an original building, and it's actually from Gordon Canyon. So it's called the Gordon Schoolhouse because it's from Gordon Canyon. I had no idea what Gordon Canyon was. It's outside of Payson, and it is like, I don't know if like there's another ghost town around there, like not like haunted town, but like an abandoned town. But it's just like it does not seem to be a space where a lot of stuff would be. Because I can only find it on like a topographical map. Like to give you guys context, and I'm gonna drop a picture.
So it's probably not even a town anymore.
No,
probably not.
It's like a little, but it's right outside of it for anyone who kind of wants to triangulate. Outside of Payson, Arizona, there's like a spot called Walnut Spring and a spot called Oak Spring, and then Gordon Canyon kind of runs through them. But yeah, it's just not like. It does not look like any place that kind of has really anything going on for it. So I don't know where a school might have been, where a little town or settlement might have been. It really feels like, especially in a canyon, anywhere in Arizona, like there could have been a single mine, and there could have been like 10 families out there, and they like popped up some tents and threw together one schoolhouse and called it a day.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this schoolhouse was used, and I part of what also makes me think maybe like a quick mining settlement, not even a town, was schoolhouse was really only in use from 1885 to 1930. So kind of popped up and then torn down.
Yeah.
Torn down but moved. which kind of makes sense as to why it's so bare bones and kind of like shabby looking and really just kind of sad looking is it was just like thrown together. The schoolhouse became actually the first completely restored historical building at Pioneer, Arizona, and a dedication ceremony for it was held on October 23rd, 1966. So this was one of like the first buildings that they moved and like fully restored back to its current state. So this is like
it just set
for them.
It just set the tone for creepy haunted, essentially.
Yes.
Every other building popped up and went, well, we need a ghost now.
Yes. All the other ghosts that were like thinking about, they're like, oh, my house moved, maybe I should move on. And then they're like, oh, well, they got that thing. Like,
yeah, I mean,
I'm not going anywhere.
We gotta balance this thing out somehow. Like, come on.
Yeah, no. And it's like, I'm glad they did because like this, like, I know we were talking earlier about how sad we feel about like the little kid ghosts and how we should just let them play and like soft spot, right? But like, it's
not in this building.
No.
This one hits a little different because this one, like, I want to know what the fuck happened here because like the reports are literally not a kid. It's not a kid sitting there at his desk and be like, oh man, like I'm so sad or I want to play. It's like the whole building is supposed to be like haunted, and guests and staff who go in there hear talking and whispering in and around the school. Just like out of nowhere.
That sounds like plotting. Against you. I
don't like it.
Apparitions of multiple children have been seen, sometimes seated in the classroom, sometimes playing outside. The ghosts are usually seen for a short time, like full body, before just disappearing into thin air. So it's just like, I just like, and I should have like looked more into this, but like, again, I was trying to cast a wide net, but like literally, like to me, I'm like, I need to look up more about where Everett Gordon School came from because that sounds like an entire schoolhouse full of kids died at once.
Yeah.
And are we like,
that sounds like,
talking
you know,
flood? Are we talking like, who knows? But I don't like it. Doesn't give good vibes.
No. No, not at all.
And like also part of it I think too is like, man, if I died as a ghost, like I do not want to be in school. Like I do not want my eternity to be spent like in school.
Well, that's why they're in there whispering and cavorting and shit. They don't want to be there either. They're like, how the fuck do we get out of here?
Gotta break out of it.
Why are we tied to this place?
Even worse, could you imagine if, and remember our visceral reaction to this picture, if they're tied there because this was the best of their lifetime, this was where they were happiest, because that's sometimes a reason for ghosts to be tied to things, is that is where they were the happiest. So, and what year did you say this was a town or this school existed?
This school, and I don't have any more about like anywhere where it would have come from, but this school was in use from 1885 to 1930.
I'm just wondering, like
that the whole time.
Like, okay,
that's a long time,
guys. Hear me out, guys. Wasn't the like? I'm just gonna throw it out there. Something like the original Spanish influenza epidemic was like 1918, right? Like it wiped out entire towns and communities, and now this town doesn't exist anymore. Not that it was that, but it could have been something like that, where just massive amounts of children and people died, and it became a ghost town, not because of mine dried up or whatever, but because there's literally nobody left alive around there that can support a town anymore.
Yeah, and creepily enough, like just like churches are gathering places, schools can also become gathering places, especially when there's a pandemic. So they turn it into like little makeshift hospitals because they have nowhere else. It's like a large room where they can put everybody together.
Especially when you get to children who are suddenly orphaned because their families have died from things like that. Like, where else are you going to put them? nobody is going to take them into their home because they don't want to get whatever it is. So yeah, things like that are definitely have happened historically.
No, that gave me goosebumps. Like I could not confirm that because I didn't find out anything specific about like the location this school comes from, other than like it's called that because of the canyon. There's probably more. I would be interested, like if you know anything about this location, or you want to hear more about it, drop comments below, and maybe we'll deep dive another time. But it's definitely like that could be a real possibility, and it gives me the heebie-jeebies. So I'm inclined to just willfully think that that's true until proven wrong. So there's that. Ooh, okay. Now, moving on from this, that was probably, I don't know what it is, but that one specifically was just like so unsettling to me. Looking at it and reading through it, that I like did my notes really quick, even though I was like, oh, this place gives me the creeps. Next, we have, if you guys want to go on to the next page, we have the sheriff's office. This is a reconstructed building, so not original, but reconstructed to match an identical building. So similar to the church, where it was like they had a specific building, they had plans, they rebuilt it. So the old sheriff's office is kind of a very boxy tan adobe style building. It's got this very large sloping wood awning. It looks like it's got like these hitching posts out front where you might tie like a horse, and a few like very rough and tumble like wood benches. It's got, just a couple windows and like a big door with bars on it. If you go inside, it's really just like kind of a very small jailhouse. So you've got like visibly one jail cell. I don't know if there's more, like a tiny little desk and like a post where you would like hang up, handcuffs or other tools and things like that. And it's got like on display, like a few like wanted posters for the time to kind of like set the scene. The interior is it's adobe walls, and it's like kind of wood beams supporting the roof, but it's like a flat top roof, like flat top adobe roof. So it's just kind of the walls and then the wooden up top. So a very kind of drastically different style. So one thing about this place is, especially, it's like a 50-year period of time where all these buildings are collected from, and they're collected from different parts of around Arizona. So a lot of different building styles are seen. This is a reconstruction of an 1881 adobe building, which stood in Globe, Arizona. So, another artifact from Globe. The original building was a combination of a sheriff's office, jail, and a courthouse for the circuit judge, who probably visited about once a month. So you did it all in once. You threw people in a jail cell. You had a little desk for your police officer or your sheriff back in the day, and then you had another like little spot for a judge who, I wonder if you even had to take the guy out of jail to go see the judge.
Probably not.
Probably not, no.
Just like,
it's right there.
You're now ready, so you're guilty. We're sentencing you.
You're guilty enough. There are two main ghosts that are supposed to be here. There is the first one. So these ghosts are kind of like, the building does not give you the creeps, but the ghost stories will make you probably a little angry. The first ghost is that of a prisoner who died while detained in the jail, supposedly. According to like the story of his haunting, he had what is thought to be like a pretty minor injury. And he asked for treatment, but was refused medical treatment because he was in jail and the sheriff didn't care. And so it's thought that his death would have been avoidable if he got that treatment, but because he was refused it, he died in that jail cell. And that kind of situation of having that death is what's made his spirit linger here. So he can be heard in the jail, calling out for help and whispering in visitors' ears when they come in to visit. You can also feel cold spots in the jail cell itself if you go visit inside the jail cell. So with this being reconstruction, I didn't find any reports of specific items that were carried over like from the original building here. I'm assuming that is the case, as with all these other, that there's some kind of like trigger object that these things are tied to. So I'm assuming maybe some part of the jail cell itself is the original, and that's kind of where he came over. Then supposedly one of the other ghosts is tied actually to more of the sheriff's items in the jail, because it is supposedly the ghost of a jailer. And he's just kind of a dick. He gives off a very stern presence. And he's said to be, I know, right? He's said to be kind of very disapproving of people coming in, especially if you sit in the cells. It's framed as if he sees you like an inmate. So if you are kind of like having a good time or playing card games or like talking and stuff, he's like very stern, and you can hear him like trying to like get you to stop, essentially. So,
and that poor prisoner that died because he couldn't get basic medical treatment, which granted, whenever he was here, if that's the kind of building he was in, probably didn't get great medical treatment even if he got it, but still wasn't given basic medical treatment to try and prevent his death. Now he's stuck in this jail, haunting it with a fucking cop who just judges him the entire time and is probably a dick to him.
Yeah.
That's a sucky afterlife. I don't want that.
I know. Quite possibly could be the guy who denied him the medical care in the first place.
And
let's be honest.
Who knows? Yeah.
And the thing is, too, so these are all supposeds. I didn't find any, like, names and dates and people behind them. So, with this level of, like, kind of secondhand accounting, who knows even why the first guy was in there. It could have been he did something like so bad, or like against somebody, like, the police officer or the jailer on duty could have had like a vendetta against him personally. Like, I don't know the story, like why he didn't get it, or it could have just been like, don't want to, town doesn't have enough resources, you're in jail for littering and therefore you deserve to die. Like, who knows where we're going with this, but like,
could have been anything, honestly.
A very oil and water pairing as far as like someone to be stuck with for all eternity.
All of eternity, yes. I would imagine neither one is very happy right now, if I had to guess.
And they're both just hoping that the other one crosses on real quick, because they're like, I can't.
Yeah, they're like, come on,
seriously.
Man.
You gotta fucking get out of here. This is my space. God.
And then, last one I have for you is another kind of quick story, but if you want to scroll down to our last set of images, we have another totally different style of building. We've got
stage,
an opera house. So our last building is, and this is another original building. It's a 2-story brick opera house, originally built in Prescott, Arizona, by a Mr. James Howley. It's actually nicknamed Howley Hall because of the builder. So this opera house it's very pretty. It's very like kind of,
it's beautiful.
It's very like big up front. It's got some big windows. It's got this huge porch on this second story that has like these pillars all the way down. You have a separate entrance all the way off to the left to get up to the second story. So you can kind of enter through the top or the bottom. And the reason you have that is actually because when it was opened, you had the opera house on the top floor, and then on the bottom floor was a general store. So it was operated as kind of this split level structure for a while. And then eventually it was, and I don't have the exact year it was moved down, but eventually it operated that way for a while. And then the building kind of went out of business with the current owner. So a new purchaser bought it, and they needed to do some renovations to it. So while they were doing renovations, they moved the opera house down to the bottom floor. Do not know what became of the second floor as far as like what they did with it. I don't know if it was 2 theaters or if it was the bottom theater and then like who knows up top. But I do know that it was moved to the bottom. So that picture you see on the bottom, which is kind of a stage, with like just some little like individual standing chairs, like looking towards it. That would be on the bottom floor. So that is the way it is set up today, to my knowledge. So with this opera house ceased functioning as a theater in about 1899. It kind of sat for a while after that, and then was eventually came to be part of this museum. I don't know how that transaction happened, exactly how it was found, or if it was something else in the meantime, but it did have still that opera house and stage on that bottom floor when it came over to the Pioneer Living History Museum. So at least to my knowledge, it wasn't reused for anything else in the interim. So it kind of just like sat there until it became this. This one, of course, has your classic descriptions of like theater ghosts. So kind of just some fun little curveball I thought to throw at everyone. So there are reports of shadowy figures often described as people are often described seeing a woman in a long dress wandering the stage and the seating area. Supposedly, she's an opera singer who met her untimely death up in the building. Sightings of her are often paired with cold spots and the faint sound of music. So she kind of just meanders around the hall.
I'd fucking
I
take
like
a cold
it.
spot right now. God damn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's hot.
You guys, maybe we go visit here and just hope that go lounge
We hit
in
a
like the
cold
jail
spot.
cell, go like sit in the opera house and be like, ghosts, if you want hugs, free hugs to ghosts.
Lounge in the jail cell and get judged by the old jailer.
Nah. Who cares what he has to say?
Yeah, he's dead.
Yeah. Haha, you're dead. I'm alive. I'd be like so mature if I ran into a ghost, guys. It'd be great. And that is
what I'm taking from this is that Joe was partially right, that there is a Prescott presence here. I would love to find out more about this. I wonder if this was on Whiskey Row, because Prescott has always just been that square,
Maybe.
right?
Yeah.
And all the big places to be were somewhere on that square. So I'd be interested to see where this one came from.
This one, yeah.
I mean, having been there, I could see this at home on Whiskey Row for sure.
It does look a lot
100%.
like the buildings on Whiskey Row, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It totally looks like, and that, like, it totally looks like it could just be a transplant directly from Whiskey Row. I don't know what they would have built in its place. But yeah, and I think the museum itself, like some of their notable buildings, will give you a lot more detail in history. So all of the images that I shared with my co-host tonight actually come from pioneeraz.org, which is the Pioneer Living History Museum's website. So you can peruse. There are a lot of other buildings there as well. And they give like a lot of detail and stuff like that. Like I said, I was kind of doing more of a blanket coverage of the ghosts. And I still cut out a lot of ghosts. A few honorable mentions before I talk about like some of our travel notes is when I was like looking for stories and stuff like this, like I found people referencing a telegraph museum that was haunted, but I didn't see it as its own building. I saw it as like a mention of like just being a little room somewhere. So like that is supposedly haunted. There's so many other cabins that are there, guys. Like there's a whole ranch complex. There's like a few different homes that are just log cabins. There is this house called the Southern House, which like looks like it's just like some barely thrown together like logs and mud, and like couldn't find anything about it being haunted, but looks haunted.
It looks like it should be.
Yeah,
like the school.
But it's just like there are so many things. Like, so a few other notable mentions are supposedly the blacksmith shop is haunted. You can hear like the sounds of like blacksmithing work,
metal clanging and stuff.
Yes.
Awesome.
That's creepy as fuck.
There is
awesome.
I know. And that one's a reconstruction too, so it's got to be like original tools there. There's like I said, I couldn't find that museum. I saw reference to a saloon, but they don't have a saloon listed on their actual museum website. But supposedly there's a saloon there that's haunted. I don't know if it's supposed to be the parlor or somewhere else. And then a few other buildings that people kind of mentioned, but the Pioneer Living History Museum did not have listed under their like notable exhibits. They even supposedly, like I saw somebody reference, again, not on the website, so I don't know if it's there, but supposedly there's a cemetery as well. Like, so I don't know if there's like a recreation cemetery or
wow.
Or if I don't know. I don't
I
know,
mean,
but supposedly that is haunted as heck. So
it could be
I
an
bet.
actual burial site.
mm-hmm.
Who knows? We've seen it before. We went to San Diego and they had like markers on the streets because they paved over part of the old cemetery, and that's where they found bodies. Looking through with like
Awesome.
that sort of X-ray tool that they use sometimes to look at what's in graves. And they do like a lot of cemeteries, especially nowadays, actually, if they're not like connected to a church, they actually like rotate bodies out and resell the plots after like 100 years or so.
Cute.
Because supposedly no one is around anymore that is going to be visiting that site.
Yeah.
So
Cute.
Yeah.
that's how we don't run out of room in cemeteries, guys.
I have seen too people saying, you know, like I know that sometimes if you find them, like, or you want to do construction, you know about it. Nowadays, like you have to rehome those like cemetery plots. So I don't know.
Yeah, so they could have done that.
I don't know if they have a cemetery or not. One, and two, I don't know if it's a reconstruction to like say like, oh, this is what it would have looked like in town, or if
if it's
like, actual
rehome.
Who knows if people like have just donated grave markers that they've just found on properties and they're like, do you want it?
Yeah.
Like, but there's just like, so yeah. So with that, like that is my, like, I could not even begin. Like once I started going into it, I just hit a point where it's like, I have to stop. I think it's
too many ghosts.
I think it's a place you could only really experience by going there yourself.
Yeah. I have to say, I'm super interested in the Telegraph Museum part because, like, literal messages from ghosts. Like, literal telegraph.
Yes.
Like, that's blowing my mind right now.
Yes.
Like, I want to go there and just, like, who knows Morse code? What are they tapping out? What is happening right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
One of us will have to learn fucking Morse code.
Oh, that's not me.
Oh,
That's
see,
not
I'll
good
bring
joke.
Kyle. I'll bring Kyle along. Kyle.
There we
Kyle
go,
was in the
yeah.
There
military.
we go. There we go. I don't have space in my brain for Morse code.
No, I
there
can't
we
learn
go.
anything new. No.
So, with that, can you visit the Pioneer Living History Museum? As I've been talking about like this entire time, yes, absolutely, you can visit. They are open. They are a functioning museum. It's still summer now, so it might be a little hot, but you know, to my knowledge, they're open all around. And they are northern Arizona, northern Phoenix. So at least it's not out in like a Tucson or a Globe where it's like even hotter usually. So it, you know, once it cools down, in theory, it should be decent to walk around in. But they have a lot to offer outside of even the ghosts. They've got reproduction, blacksmith shops, carpenter shops, dress shops, and more to kind of really give you the idea of like what it was like in Arizona during that time. Seasonally, they have costume volunteers who will go around and kind of interact with the exhibits and kind of show you what life was like. So again, it's settled around 1863 to 1912, territorial Arizona. And mission includes the Pioneer Village and the very popular Telephone History Museum. So if you are visiting Phoenix and you kind of just want like an odd attraction to do, and you're looking for something a little bit on the spookier side, would 100% recommend. It's just something to kind of get out, kind of do something that maybe is different. If you're flying into Phoenix or Scottsdale or any of the major cities, Tombstone is very, very far away. Very long drive. But you can kind of have this as like a similar type. You're not going to have the big name like OK Corral, of course, as Amy mentioned at the beginning of the episode, but you will have like a good taste of like what a real ranch would have looked like and kind of what some of these buildings would have looked like. another thing that's cool is it's all self-toured, so it's not really like you're doing a tour guide and like, no, don't touch, don't do any of that. They've got it kind of made for self-touring with just notices for you to kind of like guide and really do the things you're interested in. And they also have a very intensive school program. So like we were talking about earlier with, you know, in an earlier episode, I think it was this month, with just like our schooling in Arizona not doing a lot for Arizona history. They actually do a lot of school programs. They have field trips for children to hear, and then they actually offer teachers materials to share with their students about like Arizona history or territorial Arizona history. So kind of a quick rundown of some of the buildings you can expect to find. Original buildings include, so outside of the ones we've talked about even today, include, there's the Teacherage, which is a small log cabin, a ranch complex, which is another log cabin. There's the Northern House, which is another like specialty home that was on the overall acreage. The Flying V cabin, and the Ashurst cabin. So lots of additional like little buildings and homes outside of even just what I mentioned. It's, like I said, 90 acres, very, very big, lots of things there. The original buildings are not actually all from the area that we're located in. So like, as we kind of talked about throughout here, you'll see things from Southern Arizona Globe area. You'll see things all the way up from like Payson and Prescott, some things even from around the Phoenix Valley. So you kind of can look around and see like just a lot of the state and a lot of like different like places. Like the building that comes from Prescott being all brick, it's going to look a lot different than like the Adobe Sheriff's Office that came maybe from more of a Globe area. So you can kind of get like a taste of like different Arizona architecture from the time, which I think is really neat as somebody who has like a mild interest in architecture. And supposedly, like I alluded at before jumping into this, there's even a lot more ghosts than what I have covered. I just kept finding more and more stories. Like I literally at a certain point could not report on them all because I mean, we are like, you're at an hour of listening to me like drone on, and like I didn't even give you like in-depth hauntings. So you can just imagine like this is a full ghost community, like just how many things there are here. So yeah, if you want like a little ghosty tourist spot, I think this is a place that I will add to my notes as like might pop into for a weekend trip, you know?
Yeah. I just think this is really cool because there's all kinds of, you know, old historical buildings in some of these older towns you go to, but you can't really go interact with them. You can't get in there.
Yeah.
You can't see the interior. You can't see, like this one had furnishings, and it gives you just a better idea of how they lived. So just that aspect of it, ghosts aside, was really kind of cool to get a view of it. I thought it was really neat.
Yeah. No, that's something I think too is like, my husband and I have talked about frequently where it's like, you don't have a lot of historical buildings in Arizona to begin with. Like, it's not something that like you just see a lot, and especially not to the same extent as like you would see like out on the East Coast or anything like that. So
yeah, and
kind of have a collection of them is neat.
Part of that is because we weren't actually a state until like 1912, so we're very, very young in comparison to a lot of the rest of the country. But I think also because it was less established as like historical buildings and places being as important out here when a bunch of the sort of like the big booms were happening, like the 50s and 60s, and things just sort of ended up getting, this is an old house, we're just going to take it down and we're going to build a whole new house on top of this property. So
and it's not like Arizona was this like center of industry like some of the older, you know, big cities back in that time. So it kind of wasn't preserved the way that, you know, like a building in Chicago or New York or something would have been.
Yes. But yeah, so if you ever want just like a nice, just one day dose of Arizona history, I guess now we all
with
know
some ghosts.
With just a nice healthy sprinkling
with
of ghosts.
Side of ghosts.
Yeah. I do have to say, the stories you told are very calmer than the ones that I got from my old museum director. Hers were made out to be very much more like very creepy, but at the same time, she was also a reenactor who worked there, and she was
Yeah.
alone a lot of the time, so that could be part of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, these were definitely more of the general stories. I can totally see how somebody who is, because a lot of these spirits seem to be pretty intelligent. So I can see where somebody who's a reenactor and like maybe fits the bill for someone who would just be part of the ghost town, to get a little bit higher level of energy because they're like, oh, you're one of us, like we're
Yeah,
hanging
yeah.
out now or doing whatever. So but yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'd be really interested to hear like anyone who's ever visited, like were there buildings that were especially like off-putting to you or you didn't like, or were there like any kind of scary spots or whatever? Because like that to me, like it seems like it's a wide range because they're really just like plucking these
Yeah.
buildings out across the state. So
Yeah, for sure.
all right. Well, with that, it seems like I mean, I don't know. Would you guys consider visiting here one day?
I'd consider it more now, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to see the little yellow house. I mean, in
Yes.
person. I just want to see it.
That'd be so fun. Worth the price of that and the telephone museum. Worth the price of
100%.
admission.
100%.
Maybe the saloon if they're still serving. Like that's
I
3
mean,
spots were good.
drunk ghosts, I'm down. That seems like that would be a good mix with me. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you get along famously. All right. Once again, guys, I am Amber.
I'm Amy.
And I'm Joe.
And this has been Murderous, Mysterious, and Macabre. If you like this episode, please consider reviewing and sharing our show. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you like what we do and you want to help us cover more macabre places, then you can join our Patreon linked in the comment below. And that is a wrap. Bye.
Bye.